We've been listening to a lot of your debates. You debated Ben Shapiro twice. You're on the Patrick Bet David podcast, and we really enjoy your insights.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it was fun debating them. And I mean, I debated one person on the Patrick Bet David podcast, and that was Adam. But with Ben Shapiro, it was actually pleasantly surprising how civil and nice he is. You know, you kind of like build up a character in your head based on like little snippets and little clips that are posted online about them. And then you meet them in real life and you realize just how different they really are. And so we disagree deeply on a lot of different issues. But what those two debates kind of taught me was that you can still have like a civil conversation and you can avoid it devolving into nonsense, as long as it's like two good faith actors who are having that conversation, you know?
So how was Ben different in person than he was online? Because we had him on the podcast and he was very much different than what I thought he was
so
like.
chill. He was so
chill.
easygoing and very respectful. Like he showed up right on time to the minute.
Right.
Said he had an hour and a half. Gave us exactly an hour and a half. And then was kind enough to kind of chit chat afterwards. But
yeah, he's, you know, very polite. What I was surprised by was his warmth. Like he's actually a pretty warm guy in person, which, you know, you see this caricature of him. And honestly, like even if you watch an entire episode of his show, he's just very to the point and you don't see that warmth. So meeting people in real life, I think, just gives you a different sense of who they are and what their personality's like.
And also to understand if they're a good faith or a bad faith person. I heard you talking to Ben about this actually, where like some people you feel like they're in it as a bad faith actor, where they're just puppeting or being puppeted by somebody who's just kind of like inserting their agenda in them, and they're just doing it for clout, for fame, for money, etc. Some people, they feel very genuine in their beliefs. And Ben, I feel like, is definitely a good faith
100%.
person.
He believes what he's saying. He's not in any way a grifter. I think that even with the most good faith people, though, in the world of politics, because things have become so tribal, whether you want to believe it or not, there is some element of audience capture, and you feel this pressure to kind of go along with the default talking points on your political side or your political group. So I see a little bit of that maybe happening with him. I can tell that he's not a big supporter of Donald Trump's. In fact, in 2016, during the Republican primaries, he endorsed, I can't even believe this, but Ted Cruz. And then this time around, he was a big fan of Ron DeSantis, but he ultimately had to tuck tail and recently put out an endorsement video for Trump. But I would be shocked if he's genuinely a big supporter of Trump's.
And not to make this about Ben, but just curious.
Yeah, I know.
Like, because to me, there's nothing that I would like less than to be on the other side of a debate between Ben and me. Like that sounds like
terrifying. Yeah.
Horrifying.
It's not. I mean, he's totally normal. Like he speaks quickly.
But you could end up in one of those compilations, you know?
True, but I think there's a difference. Okay, so I think there's a difference between someone who's more interested in defending their political group versus someone who's willing to concede on issues or areas where concessions make sense. So I'll give you an example without naming names. You know, someone who identifies as a leftist fairly recently, like goes on Tim Pool's podcast and debates him on a number of issues. And during that debate, there were just obvious concessions. Like, for instance, no, you don't allow abortions of a healthy fetus, like a minute before the woman is about to give birth. Like, that's a ridiculous hypothetical. I get that it's a ridiculous hypothetical, but don't play into that hypothetical by creating this caricature of what the left is. No one on the left is in favor of aborting a perfectly healthy fetus a minute before it's about to be born. So just say that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But there's like this effort to like provide cover and defend the left or the right, depending on who the person is. And I just got to a point where I'm like, I'm not going to do that. So as long as you're willing to be honest, and as long as you've actually thought through why it is you believe what you believe, these debates aren't scary at all, I don't think.
Yeah, I feel like in these days, it's worse. The feeling is worse to be wrong than the benefit of finding truth, unfortunately, in a lot of debates.
Yeah.
And people try to be philosophically consistent, but it ends up just kind of like winding them into this weird thing where they're defending a position they don't really feel.
Isn't it sometimes you want to win in the court of public opinion, though? Like, even if you might be wrong, if you say the right things, and people are going to be like, no, you know, they won. They said the right things.
Well, so The reason why I agreed to debate Ben was because I saw it as an opportunity to display my values and where I stand on certain policy issues and like introduce that to an audience that otherwise wouldn't hear that perspective, right? I mean, you don't see a lot of people on the left go on Ben Shapiro's show. So I didn't go on his program for me. I'm super busy and like doing interviews and debates, like it can become overwhelming with my schedule. But I saw it as an opportunity to reach out to people who otherwise are unfamiliar with what I actually believe, have been misled to think I believe things I don't believe. And I wanted to see if there was any possibility in persuading members of his audience to maybe, even if they don't change their political values or anything, to at least reconsider their perspective and perceptions of the other side. And the thing that I've become increasingly interested in doing, although it's been incredibly difficult because there's a lot of resistance to it, is finding ways to bring the two sides together, assuming that we're talking about good faith people who want a better like society, better country to live in. I think there are a ton of people who are just kind of politically homeless. And right now the discourse is represented by two extremes. And so I'm trying to figure out how I can uplift people and speak to the concerns of people who are more politically homeless.
Why do you think people should listen to you?
I think people should listen to whoever makes compelling arguments, right? And my goal is to just try to make those compelling arguments, to be fair, to be as accurate as I can, to correct myself when I realize, damn, I got that story wrong. And I'm hoping that that integrity attracts people to the message that I have on my show. But ultimately, it really boils down to everyone's values. And if they have values that are just completely different from mine, I don't begrudge them for not wanting to watch the show.